But the main witness today was Bryana Bongolan. Now, if you've listened to the podcast since the beginning, since we were covering all those civil lawsuits that were coming out, you'll know she has a $10 million civil lawsuit out against Diddy for an alleged incident of dangling her over a balcony. The balcony incident was mentioned within a few seconds of her testimony, but then we returned to it in greater detail. She said that it happened at Cassie's apartment in Los Angeles, that her apartment was on the 17th story. This was September of 2016. And that she said she was there with Cassie and her ex-girlfriend. Cassie was in the bedroom. She said Bryana and her ex-girlfriend were on the couch. She couldn't recall if they were doing drugs, but she just remembers Diddy banging loudly on the door and waking her up. She was sleeping. And she says she was stressed out, woke her ex up, and rushed her to the bathroom. And on the stand, she put her finger to her mouth and she said she told her ex to, not to say anything because she didn't want to expose her, is the way she put it, to Diddy and the things she had witnessed between him and Cassie. Then she said she ran to the balcony to kind of look casual. And Bryana describes how the ledge we're seeing came about to her waist, that she's 5'1", she was weighing about 100 to 115 pounds at the time. And she says she was looking out at the view, and all of a sudden, Diddy came up from behind her, put his arms under her armpit, and lifted her up. She says he held her up with her feet on the railing, and she was trying not to slip, that she was pushing back on him, and that for a split second she was worried she was going to fall, but he just kept repeating, "You know what the F you did, you know what the F you did." And she said she was screaming back, "No, I don't know what I did." And she said to this day she still doesn't know what it was. And she just remembers him throwing her back on the balcony furniture. This is her testimony. And she said it hurt, but there was just so much adrenaline in the moment that she just got back up. And she remembers as she's falling, hearing Cassie's voice just in disbelief, saying something along the lines of, "Did you just hang her over the balcony?" And she said after that, she heard Diddy and Cassie essentially talking about how her girlfriend was there in the apartment and that he swiftly left after that. She talks about how after she left Cassie's home, she went back to her apartment and she was shaking. She said she was shaking a lot. She felt disgusting. She wanted to shower. And she said at that point she realized she had a huge bruise on the back of her leg with a puncture in the middle of it. She said she also had back and neck pain. And at that point in court, we are shown photos that she said she took that day, and you can see it's like this big red bruise with this tiny piercing as if something kind of ruptured the skin in the middle. And she also talks a little bit about the fact that she was just too scared to get any medical treatment. So she said she spoke to her managers who told her, look, if you don't want to say what happened, at least go to a chiropractor. And she said she got a neck brace from the chiropractor, was asked who did this to you, but she was too scared to say. And in terms of lasting impact, she does say that she still has nightmares about it, that she just the other day had a nightmare, that she has paranoia. She screams in her sleep. She says that's dissipated a little bit. And in terms of the pain to her neck and her back, she's like, look, I was on a lot of drugs at the time, so I didn't quite realize how much pain I was under. But once she got sober, she realized how much of a lasting impact the neck and back pain became. She basically said that he just FaceTimed her a little bit later, him or someone in his entourage, and she just remembers saying in a FaceTime video, look, I don't want any issues with you, and him putting his hand on his head in the video, and that they just kind of moved on because they both wanted to be cool. They just wanted to have a good relationship. She said her and Cassie first crossed paths when she was working at Young and Reckless Streetwear in 2013 to 2014. She said that they started to bond over time, that she would stay at Cassie's house a lot, that their drug use increased as their relationship got closer and closer, and that there were times where they both tried to get sober. They would kind of fall back into addiction because it was hard, but that they were hanging out together with the same group of friends, they were working together, they were doing drugs together, and she said they're still friends to this day. They kept asking, what offer, if any, was conveyed. There were a lot of objections to that. And essentially, she says she declined the offer that was made to her and that they've never spoken since that moment. So she says that she got a lawsuit a month or two later filed. She insisted it was because she wanted to seek justice for what happened to her. And she was asked, how much her lawyer on her behalf requested, and they requested $10 million. She says it is the figure her lawyer came up with, not from her. And she says, look, I'm not expecting to get any money from the criminal trial, and yes, I would give the money back if I could take away everything that happened to me. This, I think, was a day that the defense were celebrating, probably. I mean, in my notebook, I can't tell you how many I don't remembers I wrote, or I can't recall, or can you rephrase the question? So we go back through several different incidents, but if you look at the balcony incident in particular, Nicole Westmoreland, the defense lawyer, really zeroed in on the inconsistencies in their story. And she suggested under cross-examination that actually Cassie and Bryana spoke. They were working together in November of 2023 and December of 2024. Bryana was aware of Cassie's lawsuit and that they were speaking throughout this whole entire time discussing past claims. Well, in cross-examination, Nicole Westmoreland made it seem like the two of them were essentially plotting together in a way. She said, isn't it true that you discussed the locations of where you said this happened? Cassie said it happened at a hotel. You said it happened at her apartment. Isn't it true that you two were discussing specific dates? She said one, you suggested another. Isn't it true that you were asked who was there? And on and on and on it went. And it was to kind of give this sense to the jury that, here are two people who are still talking and are colluding to go after Diddy and make money off of him. That's the impression they were trying to leave the jury with. Basically, the defense pointed out that Bryana and Cassie were working to put out a clothing line, that they were working over a 2-year period, and this was at a time when they were doing drugs almost every single day. And they said, weren't you competing with the likes of Beyonce and Rihanna? And Bryana agrees with the defense that the reason the company didn't work out was not because Diddy was holding Cassie back in any way, but it was actually because of their own problems in getting the business together. And there was one very pointed question where she says, isn't it hard to be productive in business when you're getting high every day? So it was an attempt by the defense to show that Cassie was failing at other ventures and other things at a time when she was also pursuing a music career, and that Bryana was somebody who wasn't just doing drugs with her, but was acting almost as her supplier, actually getting part of her income on the drugs she was selling to Cassie. And that was a big part of their dynamic and why Cassie wasn't able to be successful. Nicole Westmoreland was saying, isn't it true that you first told the government that you were at a party, not that you were sleeping? Wouldn't you agree that sleeping and being at a party are two different claims? Then she said, you never told the government that Diddy came in banging. The first time you made the allegation of him banging on the doors in your civil complaint. Also, you said one point you were smoking weed, another time you were smoking a cigarette or pretending to smoke weed. She says those are 3 different things. She also says you told the government that you saw Diddy charging directly at you from across the room. Again, she says, I don't remember, when this Nicole Westmoreland kind of tries to hammer her on that. And then she says, didn't you accuse Combs of assaulting you, putting his hands on your chest and groping you after your demand letters, essentially, when you spoke to the government? And so Nicole Westmoreland telling her, are you lying? Trying to bring up any inconsistency in their stories to attack their credibility. I mean, every answer toward the end was almost, I don't recall, I don't remember. And the defense, at one point, the judge asked them, how much time do you have? And they said, how much time will you give us? They didn't want this to go into the next day. They wanted to finish with her on the stand then and there, because clearly they felt they were in a position of strength with this questioning.